This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Jennifer Duke.
Good morning.
So, obviously, you have been filling in for Sean Aylmer while he is off jet-setting around the world, having a wonderful time. And so you are stepping into what is a very, very kind of fiercely competitive environment, the weekend edition. You have been here before. You have been here as our judge because, so you would understand the concept that the weekend show is very different to the weekday show where we are each nominating the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, which is one that's kind of flying under the radar a little bit or maybe not getting the attention that we feel that it deserves, and then our favourite story as well. So you have been our judge, our adjudicator in the past. Obviously, you're effectively Sean this week.
I feel like I prefer judging already. I'm slightly terrified.
It does get a little bit fiery at times, but that is why we have a judge. We have a judge not so much to keep us in line, but to direct our ire at, and that is Adam Lang, our Fear and Greed colleague. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Michael, and good morning, Jen.
Good morning.
Adam, are you prepared to sit in judgment of Jen today?
Be kind to me.
I am. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm looking forward to this.
Can you give us a very brief rundown of the criteria, please? Because your judging criteria are infamous because they sound quite strict, but they are applied so unusually at times. So maybe just give Jen, for the benefit of Jen, just give her a quick kind of rundown on what you're looking for in these stories.
All right. So, Jen, number one, topicality, and then timeliness, then economic impact. And next is a critical one, my own subjective bias. And last, something that was introduced a bit later in the piece of the evolution of the weekend edition, and that is melodrama. So we like a little bit of theatre about the debate.
Is there a court of appeal if I don't agree with your judgments?
Yep, it'll be Sean, and you'll just have to wait till he gets back from 35,000 feet.
Fair enough.
The best part of that was I was actually writing down all of those categories as though it was the first time I've heard them, because really it's the first time I suspect they will be applied fairly, because I reckon Adam's going to be on his best behaviour in terms of the way that he's judging this. Jen, would you like to go first? As this is your first time, it feels only fair that you should get to go first for the biggest story of the week.
You just want to get me to put all my cards on the table early on.
That's exactly right. And then I can just come in and just go, whack, whack, I've got this.
Well, good thing I'm feeling overconfident today. The biggest story of the week is obviously Australia finding its feet on the world stage, and we're finally seeing some proof. So on the one hand, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has been invited to an official state dinner with US President Joe Biden. And if that's not huge enough, at the same time, there have been more developments with China. Trade Minister Don Farrell said he is extremely confident that now barley tariffs have been scrapped, the wine tariffs are next to go. And there's been ongoing trade tension for ages, but he reckons Canberra and Beijing can finally stabilise this relationship. Now, even more, add to that Albanese is expected to make another trip to Beijing later this year. And on Friday, India, Japan, the US and Australia held Navy exercises off the coast of Sydney. And it's the first time that Australia has hosted the Quad's Malabar War exercises. That's a pretty big sign of the four nations' joint military strength. And I think that deserves the biggest story of the week.
And the best part is,
I feel like I need a mic drop. That's like, and then walk off the stage. Please give me a win.
No, well, the fact is that there was brevity to that as well. Sean just does not have that ability to do anything briefly, whereas and occasionally I'll tend to waffle. But usually it's all Sean. The thing that I love most about that story, and I shouldn't be adding to your story at all because it's not in the competitive.
Oh, please
spirit.
do. I'll take it.
I just love the fact, and you mentioned this at the start, the fact that on one hand you've got the improvements in the trade relationship with China and the potential now that the wine tariffs are going to be dropped. And at the same time, you got Albo going to an official state dinner with Joe Biden. So we're being courted by China, essentially. We're being courted by the US. These two are rivals on the world stage. And here's little Australia just kind of walking this path, our own path in between the two of them. And it just kind of shows that and from a diplomatic sense, we really have kind of found our feet. And I'm actually now almost saying, forget my story. Let's just go with yours. I love this story.
Can we just win jointly on this one and everyone just agrees that this is the story?
Well, I don't like sharing. I'm not a good sharer. So
No.
I can't share the win because my biggest story, well, it is the biggest story because it's reporting season, of course. And this week we saw things really get moving. We saw some big results, so many results to choose from. But in the end, in the interest of brevity, but also in the interest of just making a one kind of coherent point, which is probably actually aiming a bit high here, I've chosen just two results from all of the results we've chosen from this week. Two big ones that tell us something about business conditions and something about the economy. Number one was actually the first to report this week, James Hardie. The building materials company really kind of showed us what's going to matter this reporting season, pricing power. And Sean made this point before he left, that it was able to expand profit margins, even with high inflation, even with wages rising quickly, which is impressive as well, considering that it's operating in a sector, housing construction sector, which hasn't been doing so well lately. And it showed on day one of reporting season that investors are looking closely at pricing power, costs and profit margins. And clearly they loved James Hardie because the company's share price shot up 16% after the announcement, which is quite extraordinary. The other big result, the other major one this week that just gobbled up all of the headlines is the Commonwealth Bank. And they had a record full year profit of $10.2 billion. But we talk about profit margins, and here we have CBA Chief Executive Matt Comyn warning that the home loan and deposit market will remain highly competitive. That's despite all this talk. There's been plenty of talk lately that the days of fierce competition are over. We had a couple of other big insights into how the economy is travelling from Commonwealth Bank, and Matt Comyn said that we're seeing consumer demand moderate and economic growth slow, and he said that they're closely monitoring the impact of reduced discretionary spend, particularly on our small and medium-sized business customers. On the mortgage front, he was saying that late repayments are going to increase. He's acknowledging the delayed effect of rising rates, other cost of living pressures. So not great news from our biggest bank and one of our biggest companies. Biggest story of the week, definitely. Insight into the economy, insight into what investors are looking for. This story, it has it all. I mean, obviously it doesn't have kind of Albanese and China and wine and everything, but apart from that, it's got it all. And it's got the victory wrapped up. Adam.
Michael, one of the most precious lines, I think, was you praising brevity. So thank you for doing that.
With a rich sense of irony.
Yes. So, Jen, welcome to the fray. That was awesome. I loved your opening line. Australia finding its feet on the world stage. And I got to say, you had me from that moment. You win this one. That was really good. The reason is not just the mic drop at the end, very good melodrama, was just the impact, the macro environment that's set here at an international level, how well we're cooperating with America, the Quad, how we're using international relations, and how that's not only helping geopolitics for us, but also setting the business trading environment. What we've been able to achieve in China and the improvement in trade is sensational and huge, billions involved. Michael, yours is excellent too, and two really good results. But you'd have to say in the course of this whole week, that reporting season has been quite as expected. There's some really interesting stories, but nothing phenomenal. And I think that's why Jen has to win the biggest story of the week.
Where does the unexpected category come into your criteria?
Economic impact is the critical differentiator here. And I've got to say, Michael, she just got you on melodrama.
Okay, I will have to step it up.
Might be beginner's luck.
The melodrama, I will step up the melodrama. If there's one thing I can do, it's add a little bit more theatre to the performance. Let's do most remarkable, shall we? So it's 1-0. Well done, Jen. That's a good start. Unfortunately, that's as far as you're going to go because I'm sorry.
Big call. Big call.
I know it's a big call, but I feel like, and I know that this is your first show and I should be kinder and more gentle, but I can feel the win that I was expecting is disappearing very quickly. So I'm kind of doubling down on the competitive spirit here.
And he's back.
Most remarkable story for me. I have chosen this particular story, right, because it's not just a story. It is a story that has the potential to become legend in business. And I reckon in decades to come, we will still be talking about this as a fantastic decision by a company early on, and they have benefited many, many times since then. I'm talking about Blackbird, a venture capital fund, taking a little punt, way back in 2013 on a small Australian startup that was just trying to find a backer and not having a huge amount of luck. But then they found Blackbird, and Blackbird invested $3 million initially into this little business. That $3 million investment is now worth more than $1 billion because the company they backed was Canva, which is now Australia's most valuable private tech firm. This week, we learnt that Blackbird has sold some of its stake in Canva, $150 million worth. They are still big investors, big investors in the graphic design software company, because that sale only represented 3% of their stake, because they've invested in multiple kind of funding rounds since then. But the sale to US investors did two things. It revalued Canva at about $25.5 billion US dollars, or 39 billion Australian, which is down from previous valuations, but it is still, according to the founders, still solid. And it's also not out of the ordinary for what's been happening lately in that sector. But the other thing that makes this quite remarkable and it's quite significant, and Adam ties back into a few sleeper stories that we've been talking about previously, it delivered a small payday to some of the backers of one of Blackbird's funds, like Host Plus and Aware Super, and their return was relatively small compared to their total assets. But it was extremely valuable because it helps prove that their valuations of unlisted assets, which is something that super funds have been under a lot of pressure about lately, it helps prove that their valuations of unlisted assets, at least in this case, are accurate. The most remarkable, though, you kind of put all of that into the mix, and it is very, very, very hard to go past that initial $3 million punt on Canva that is now worth more than $1 billion. This story, as I said, will become legend. Jen.
Oh, that's a hard thing to follow. Legendary. Talking about it for decades to come.
Yeah. I'm speculating here, but
nervous.
I mean, it's an accurate speculation.
Well, look, my most remarkable story for the week is something that may seem a little smaller on the surface of things, but it was a story about US aviation leader Boeing partnering up with the CSIRO. And the reason it's my most remarkable of the week is that they're trying to do something that all businesses are being encouraged to do in the transition to net zero. So they're looking to take Australian agricultural waste, feedstock, and turn it into 5 billion litres of eco-friendly plane fuel. And right now, there's only about 300 million litres a year of this type of fuel being produced. Now, it's the kind of improvement we're going to need to see to reach that net zero carbon emissions by 2050 goal. And I think that this story is super remarkable in that it's how companies in different industries can innovate together to reach something that's quite an insurmountable goal at the moment. And a lot of people are quite worried about our pathway to net zero. And I think it shows where there's really, really big payoff. And this could be a huge industry for Australia where we have massive amounts of agricultural waste. So even more remarkable, if I want to throw this in there, is that the government's working group on reducing airline emissions is called the Jet Zero Council, and they're meeting next week. So I think that alone should win.
just for the name, Jet Zero Council.
Just for the name. I'm going for brownie points now.
Do you reckon, can you just imagine the moment when they came up with the name? They're just there going, okay, what do we call ourselves? The Zero Carbon Emission for Jet Fuel Committee. And someone goes, nah, I've got it. Jet Zero.
I hope they got a pay rise
Jet
for
Zero,
it. I really do.
That employee of the month right there. Well done.
Is the Jet Zero Council like the Jedi Council?
I'm assuming so.
Yeah.
As long as they have to wear the clothes and have the lightsabers, that's fine.
So this was a great battle, and I love, Jen, the green element of the Jet Zero Council and the hope that we've got here. And the CSIRO has got massive credibility, and so has Boeing. So you think there could be a lot in this, and I really hope there is. In this case, I had to give it to Michael because that money is in the bank, and that is just such a sensational investment, a great Australian success story that is internationally impactful. So, Michael, you win this one.
Thank you, Adam.
I actually think that's fair.
No, Jen, sorry.
No, that's not how this works, is it?
The first thing you need to learn is never accept the judge's decision.
No.
And if it goes against you, get cranky. That's the way it works.
That's right.
If Sean has taught me anything, it's that.
Does that work for him?
It never works for him. We'll come back in a moment and find a sleeper story of the week. All right, so the score is 1-1. We are now heading into the sleeper story of the week. The sleeper story, Jen, is obviously the story that we think is maybe not getting the attention that it deserves, or that's kind of flying under the radar a little bit. And it's often a story that you have to work a little bit harder to find. I tend to struggle with this one. I rarely win this category. I'm not trying to kind of set you up here too much, but I would like you to go first, please.
This one is a little bit tense, isn't it? Now we're 1-1.
It's been tense the whole way through for me.
Well, look, there was this great story that Sean had earlier on Fear and Greed through the week, and I think it deserves an awful lot more attention than it got. And it was that the US government scientists have achieved a net energy gain in a fusion reaction for the second time. And for those of us who can imagine what we can do with the limitless clean power, this is the stuff that dreams are really made of. So since the 50s, physicists have been seeking to tap into the type of fusion reaction that makes the sun so powerful. And at the end of last year, they cracked the code to be able to produce more energy from a reaction than it consumes. And this experiment was successfully repeated at the end of July, with even more energy being produced than the initial attempt. And that was according to the Financial Times. So fusion reactions emit no carbon, produce no long-lived radioactive waste, and a small cup of hydrogen fuel could theoretically power a house for hundreds of years. And I'm currently someone who lives off-grid on solar and batteries, and this seems like the kind of technology that's a bit of a game changer. So given its significance and its sort of potential to affect our future for the better, and the scale of the coverage that it received versus the actual implications of it, that's definitely my sleeper story.
So are you sussing this story out to see whether you can have a little mini fusion reactor at your own home in order to...
I would love it, but Elon Musk style billionaire investment in my tiny house.
Yeah, just dream big. That is a good story. I have a very good sleeper story as well. I don't know whether it's going to win. I'm not kind of surrendering or anything, but I'm just kind of being realistic with my expectations. I do think it is the ultimate sleeper story because it actually has it all. And working through Adam's list, it's got the lot, and it's in particular it's built around Australian workers and global implications, global economic implications. So it's got everything, tick, 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 tick on Adam's list. I'm talking about workers threatening to strike at 3 major LNG projects. We've got the Northwest Shelf venture run by Woodside, and then the Gorgon and Wheatstone projects, which are run by Chevron. So these are Australian sites, right? But the threat of industrial action here saw gas spot prices in Europe spike by as much as 40% this week. And really, we are not talking about this much at all. And it's kind of localized to thinking, okay, these are some projects that are off the coast of Western Australia, that it will be localized kind of just here. But it is not. That this is something that has major global implications. And that is why the eyes of the world are on Australia at the moment. The fact is that none of these projects actually ship gas directly to Europe, but it doesn't matter because they make up 41 million tonnes per year of LNG capacity, almost half of Australia's total export capacity, and almost 11% of global supply. So that is big. And just the very threat, the potential that supply could be disrupted is having an enormous impact, particularly as Europe is looking to shore up supplies ahead of winter and still dealing with the consequences of the war in Ukraine. The pressure is on Woodside in particular at the moment to resolve this. They're really the ones that are going to be hit by this first. And the pressure is on because the global economic repercussions could be huge. So it is essentially almost a small Australian story because it's when you compare it to other Australian companies, there are not that many workers involved in this. But for such a small kind of workforce, the global impact could be massive. Adam, have I found an extraordinary sleeper story or what?
Actually, Michael, I think you have.
Oh, no.
I'm really sorry, Jen, but the way you've brought that together, Michael, I mean, and I knew these facts, right? But it's like if you're using a weather analogy, if a butterfly flaps its wings in South America, do you get a tornado in the US? It is such a fragile economic environment. The warfare, Russian invasion of Ukraine, the geopolitical nature of threats that we've seen going on at an international scale, and a strike in Australia causes that massive impact on prices internationally. And just how much of a significant player we are in gas, I think it's got everything and in terms of watching it. So, Jen, I love your story too, and I'm so filled with hope that there is a solution here. that this can be something that can be a medium and even long-term solution to energy creation, that is awesome.
But
on this one, I think it's right on our doorstep and visible now. Michael has to win.
How about that pause there between the when you knew it was coming, Jen?
I was like, you're breaking my heart. I can feel my heart shattering in two.
Hey, we have never seen this tactic before, Adam, have we? The sympathy play.
I'll go for sympathy. I'll take it every time.
I love the strategy.
I'm calling it good melodrama. Excellent work.
The strategy that is coming into this.
I'm not very good at being angry, so I have to go with,
okay.
Give me the sympathy and the empathy.
Shall I go first for the favourite story of the week?
Yeah, I think so. I need to recover.
Because we're now 2-1. And I was kind of going through the stories this week, and there's been some good ones. There's been some great stories through this week. So many options, but it was impossible in the end to go past this one. What I would describe as a spectacular own goal by a global tech company. I'm talking about Zoom, of course, the video conferencing company that's made it so easy for people all around the world to work remotely. So what did they do this week? They became the latest company requiring workers to come back into the office. I think if you just kind of consider what that means, just for a moment. This is a company that is entirely built on the idea that you can work from anywhere. And that company is demanding employees who live within 50 miles of one of its locations to come into the office at least 2 days a week. It calls the new requirements a structured hybrid approach. I call it disastrous. Surely, if any company was going to adopt a full remote approach, even just to show what its product can do, what it is capable of, that it would be Zoom that would do that. Reassuringly, they've still said that they'll still use Zoom for remote meetings. Good-o. They're hardly going to use kind of Google Meet or Teams or anything. Zoom, I think, is one of those pandemic success stories, and it's one of those ones that just shot up because of the circumstances. Its shares jumped 15-fold from its IPO price the year before the pandemic. Its valuation peaked at $140 billion. I was reading billion US. That is. I was reading at one point it exceeded the value of ExxonMobil, which is just extraordinary to think that this little company that is based purely on providing one product, which is a video conferencing product, that had exceeded this global giant. Anyway, it's now down about 85% since then. And I just think it just feels like an own goal that they should really kind of lead by example, and that they want to say that, hey, you can use this technology to work from anywhere, and it is as good as being in the room with other people. If any company is going to say that, then surely it should be Zoom. Anyway, it made me chuckle this week, and it's my favorite story. I'm not gonna over-egg this one. I'm not gonna put too much mayo on the story. To me, it's just a good story. Jen, what have you got?
I know. I feel like my favorite story is you saying you don't over-egg your favorite story, actually.
Oh, well played.
Look, my favorite story of the week has actually got to be the possible future deal between Google and Universal Music to license singers' voices to use them for artificial intelligence-generated songs. This monetizing of deep fake songs is so much like an episode of Black Mirror that you sort of have to think about the implications of this one. It's likely to give us plenty of outrage from the glitterati if the discussions turn into anything legitimate. Drake and Ice Cube have already been pretty concerned. And the only problem is that the talks are reportedly at very early stages without any products likely to be unveiled soon. So this one might be a bit of a slow burn, but it's a pretty interesting signal about what AI could do to industries that we haven't been talking about up until now. So things like music, things like artist-created products, and create commercial opportunities that perhaps we've not considered before.
Oh, that's clever. Because Adam loves any music story. He's a music nut. And so you've done another Aylmer trick, which is just play the man.
Music and a commercial opportunity. I feel like it's a winner.
It may well be. Adam, is it?
Okay. So this is a business news podcast, because I've got to say, Jen, on the Universal Music and Google story, I feel a chill about this story. I really do. As a music fan, it's like, oh, okay, this is a bit twisted and bizarre for me. But as a business story, the ownership of copyright, the use of AI, Google and Universal working together, and surely they won't be the only record company. This is massive. Like what this means for creativity and the arts. Will artists get paid? what will they get paid if their voice is used in AI? I mean,
will the songs be any good? The biggest question of all.
Well, that's the great question. And, it's less than 1% of songs make it as hits. So there's, by definition and probability, that is going to be low. But, God, it's interesting. So I think I have to give this one to you for favourite story of the week. Michael, question for you, the Zoom rules, because this is hilarious. As you pointed out, the Zoom rules were for, if I'm correct, if you live within 50 miles, you have to do 2 days per week in the office. That's right, yes?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. So 2 days a week is not a massive thing, but how many people do you reckon live within 50 miles that'll now go, if I move 1 mile
Oh, great idea.
I can just get out of this rule altogether and never go into the office.
Oh, that is well, it'll be like suddenly in the, how when real estate agents are advertising a property and they'll say it's in the school catchment area for this area.
Yes.
Now, if they're advertising a property, they can say it's just outside the 50-mile limit for Zoom, so you're okay. It would be a good selling an incentive, don't you think?
I love it.
I feel like someone needs to capitalize on that and create some kind of an app now where you put in your business and it tells you what the different rules are for different companies and then where you're living, and you can actually figure out if you can work from home. There we go.
Yeah, how to avoid working in the office app.
I don't want to get people too excited, but I think we've just come up with the new Canva.
I fully agree.
Yep.
Fear and Greed app. Okay.
Okay, so what are we, 2-2?
2-2 on the story count. And Michael, very high score, 89 points.
Mm.
And I have to say, coming into the last story, you were each equal, right, on the point score.
Oh, no.
So
no.
Jen, yes, Jen, 90 points.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
I'm just the sweet sound of winning.
You opened so strong, Jen. You were hard to beat from the beginning, but Michael got right up alongside you for a while there.
A neck and neck race is always much better to win than one where someone falls right far behind. So that's way more satisfying.
Can we just take a moment to observe the fact that my highlight this week, my strongest category was probably actually my sleeper story?
Well, Michael, it was equal best on the score count.
This has never happened to me before.
Because your Blackboard story, Remarkable, was awesome too.
Oh, well, look, you know what? In the end, good result, 90 points to 89. Congratulations, Jen. That is a good result.
I'm very pleased with that.
Jen, did you hear the gritted teeth as Michael's words of congratulations came through?
Very genuine. Very, very genuine. I do mean it. And not just because, Jen, I know that you have a very kind of other busy job working as economics correspondent for Capital Brief, but I'm also hoping that you'll come back and do this again next week. So I don't want to be too harsh in my hollow congratulations.
We'll call it beginner's luck, and then you don't have to hate me too much.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jen.
Thanks so much.
And thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast and join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great weekend.